Welcome everyone to the latest online meeting from Leeds Theosophical Society. We've been doing this now for almost 4 years, and we also this year have been doing a series of conversations as well as talks. But this afternoon, we're very lucky and honoured and pleased to welcome Antti Savinainen, all the way from Finland, who's going to be talking about something that fascinates me personally, understanding and overcoming karma. So Antti, welcome, and it's over to you. If I could ask everyone else, please, to mute themselves. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. Can you see the screen? So, my topic today is understanding and overcoming karma. This is not to say that I would fully understand karma, let alone have overcome it, but I think that there are perspectives which we can draw from theosophy, Rosicrucian theosophy, and anthroposophy, which help us to understand the, the idea of karma and perhaps even make it somehow part of our own lives. So, let's see. Yeah. First, I provide the outline of the talk. Karma is popular today in terms of you might find it in 2 movies and everyday talk, and typically it means something unpleasant taking place to a person who has perhaps violated some other person or something like that. People instinctively feel that this is some of my doing, and they might say, this is my karma. However, in terms of theosophical understanding, it's a bit more deep, since we have this idea of past lives and reincarnation. There might be such a thing as instant karma, but I think that theosophical ideas draw from the earlier lives and perhaps much more profound ideas related to karma. And first, I'm going to talk about compensatory and evolutionary conceptions on karma. There are 2 ways of looking at karma. And later on, I will draw my conclusions on whether theosophical understanding is more like compensatory or evolutionary. Then I'm going to discuss some ideas from theosophy, what we talk about merit and demerit, and then the higher self and karma, and lots of karma, and a bit of Rosicrucian perspective on that. I suppose everything this about what I'm going to say, or more or less what I'm going to say, is familiar to most people within the circles of theosophy. Then I will discuss karma and illnesses. And this comes from the Finnish theosophist, Rosicrucian theosophist Pekka Ervast, who lived from 1875 to 1934. And he was able to, I suppose, find out karmic reasons, because he was clairvoyant, but he was a theosophist and perhaps the most prominent theosophist at the time in Finland. And then I will discuss 3 types of karma exercises provided by Dr. Steiner. And there are some quite convenient and practical meditations, or perhaps practices which can be adopted quite easily. Some of them are, the greater karma exercises will be demanding, but perhaps they are worth pondering as well. And finally, I will explain some ideas again from the Finnish Rosicrucian theosophist Pekka Ervast, what kind of 3 steps one can take to overcome karma. Okay, so what do we mean? The compensatory perspective of karma maintains that karma is the law of cause and effect, providing moral reward or punishment for human beings. The deed is not the only factor affecting karmic consequences. The inner reasons and motivations are also important in this regard. In addition to deeds, thoughts and words are karmically important. However, not all actions have karmic consequences. Mundane deeds are considered karmically neutral if they are done without attachment. One may wonder, however, what contemporary mundane choices really are karmically neutral, or at least low karmic, for instance, in the case of consumption patterns such as food and clothes. I think that if one looks more carefully about what's behind, say, food production chains, one might find sources of suffering, which inevitably will carry some karma with them for people at the other end of the chain. A karmic deed has two types of consequences. First, it leaves an inner mark on the person. This may manifest itself as a tendency, or it may foster a pre-existing character trait. Hence, this kind of psychological karma may easily become visible in one lifetime. For instance, there is some scientific research showing that negative attitudes have measurable consequences on one's health and happiness, and vice versa. Good attitudes and practices like gratitude, they foster well-being, which can be measured. And then the second point of view is evolutionary karma. And it is about not really about reward in a moral sense, but it's about mechanism for which is a cosmic principle which aims at evolution. And evolutionary karma guides human beings and their development through repeated incarnations. And the karmic process has a goal, that is spiritual evolution of human being into something else. And it's also important to note that both views of karma has this idea of the karmic balance, because individuals or separate deeds typically are not that powerful to change individuals' karma that much, but it's the karmic balance, the total amount of karma over the many incarnations, which is kind of the key to different lives and what will happen and so forth. So the total balance of karma determines the conditions in which a soul is born and the lifespan and various experiences one has to face. That is important to remember. And then let's go for theosophical understanding of karma. Of course, the best source for me in this is Madame Blavatsky. And she wrote that there is the karma of merit and the karma of demerit. Karma neither punishes nor rewards. It is simply the one universal law which guides unerringly and, so to say, blindly all other laws. This seems to suggest that even though there is some merit in the idea of compensatory karma, it's not about moral reward or punishment. It is the fundamental law of the universe, and it seems that in theosophy it is taken perhaps as the most profound law in the universe because it guides other laws, just like the quote, I think, implies. And it is, again, important to know that motivation in theosophy is everything. That's what, for instance, the Mahatma letters clearly state. Even though our deeds may not have the effect we want, if our motivation is pure, we can perhaps continue on that path and learn to do more proficient and more fruitful deeds. But without the good motivation, the karmic result will not be good eventually. One way to look at karma is to say that there is no such thing as bad karma. All consequences are good in the sense that they help us to liberate from our past mistakes. Moreover, karma can be considered to be a good law since it guarantees that no spiritual effort is lost. This is a key to spiritual development. Although our present conditions are determined by karma, our future depends on our thinking and efforts right now. Every positive thought, kind word, and compassionate deed will have an effect that creates a better future for the whole of humankind. Theosophy also allows one to see why even thoughts are important. They have their own energy, which does affect us as well as others, since reality involves both visible and invisible realms, such as astral and mental planes. Karma is formed in all spheres of human life. Individuals, families, organizations, such as Theosophical Society, cities, nations, and whole world have karma. Sometimes one can participate in group karma, which is not due to an individual actions in this or past life. However, it is also possible that the drastic incident is not due to any karmic reason from individuals' past. Sometimes one can be involved in an accident which would not belong to their karma at all, not even the group karma. This will be compensated in future, and this could be a start of something new and good. This idea comes true in the Mahatma letters and Steiner's teachings, as well as from Pekka Ervast. Let us next turn to discussing the higher self, which eventually carries the karmic responsibility. According to theosophy, the human being consists of physical body with an etheric double, soul, and spirit, which is often called the higher self or inner self. Our mortal personality is more or less identical to the soul, whereas the higher self is immortal. The higher self represents eternal values, but is still under the process of spiritual evolution. The goal is to become a servant of all life, filled with love and wisdom. The ideal is sometimes called the perfect human being or the master. From this perspective, the theosophical interpretation of karma corresponds exceedingly well with the notion of evolutionary karma. Our personality is indeed mortal as it changes from one incarnation to another. This means that personality does not reincarnate, except in rare cases as suggested by children who seem to remember their past lives. Does our higher self reincarnate then? No, it does not, until we reach the initiation, that is, a union with the higher self and personality, which is called enlightenment in the Eastern philosophy. The theosophical explanation of reincarnation is that the higher self generates a new personality for each incarnation based on the totality of individual karma. The higher self takes the karmic responsibility through the personality it creates. One often hears that we have not chosen to be born on earth. According to theosophy, this is not the case at all. The preview of the forthcoming life before incarnation has been described by Madame Blavatsky, Steiner, and Ervast, to name a few. Moreover, Ervast beautifully describes how the individual, in its heavenly state, sees the new incarnation as an opportunity to become a better human being. I will read a passage. The new earthly life presents itself to us. We see what is waiting for us. We see that we must step down to earth and clothe ourselves in a new personality. We see the lesson we have to learn in this new life, and we kneel down in our spirit and are immensely grateful to life for the opportunity to go to the school of life. And one's soul feels, now I want to try better than before to be pure, honest, and peaceful within myself. I want to be loving towards all beings, and out of joy one makes a promise to God, I will give my all. We all have made this promise, if these words are true, and I believe they are, because theosophical sources are so on the same opinion about it. So the individual accepts all the karma in the consciousness of the higher self before birth. This acceptance comes with deep understanding of the evolutionary purpose of karma. The individual sees the rebirth and karma as cosmic grace, as an opportunity to reach for the ideal of the perfect human being. Theosophy doesn't talk much about grace because it's perhaps theologically Latin concept, but I think that in this context it is an apt way to put it. So how does karma work then? Theosophy talks about the lords of karma who take care of the implementation of karmic consequences, which manifest at individual, group, national, and global levels. One can only imagine how difficult a task it must be to adjust the karma of multitude beings. However, this view suggests that karma might not be a blind law, as its execution requires the work of intelligent beings. In a way, everyday experience supports this interpretation, as many karmic-like incidents, pleasant and unpleasant alike, come in one's way in the form or through other human beings. Interestingly, the founder of the anthroposophical movement, Rudolf Steiner, said, quote, occult clairvoyant research tells us that in our epoch, Christ becomes the Lord of karma for human evolution, so that in the future it will rest with him to decide what our karmic account is, how our credit and debit in life are related. Quote ends. Steiner also stated that before entering Kamaloka, the individual will meet Moses as a bookkeeper of the karmic powers who present their records of sin. This is changing, or has already changed to some extent, since people will more and more meet Christ Jesus as their karmic judge. Moreover, Christ will help individuals in balancing karma in new incarnation. Quote, from Steiner, we shall then have to encounter events through which our karma can be balanced. For every man must reap what he has sown. The balancing must be arranged so as to be in the best possible accord with the concerns of the whole world. It must enable us to give all possible help to the advancement of mankind on earth. In the future, it will fall to Christ to bring the balance of our karma into line with the general earth karma and the general progress of humanity. Now, I don't know if Steiner is correct in this one. Ervast had the same view. But anyway, it will give some idea on how lords of karma work, be they Jesus Christ or some other entities discussed in Theosophy. Now we have taken several perspectives to the nature of karma. Let us next turn to discussing a more specific aspect of personal karma. Karma and illnesses. Well, to begin with, this is a bit sensitive topic. Hence, it is important to note that one can make no deduction of other people's moral character based on what illnesses they are struggling with. Our approach to other people must always be compassionate and loving, not passing judgments. It's natural for people to think about reincarnation to look to the more distant past for the causes of serious illnesses. According to Pekka Ervast, occult studies prove that karmic diseases have a cause in the psyche. This is the case, for example, with lung disease, as Ervast called it, which is nowadays probably tuberculosis, which has to do with the lungs and breathing. It is a disease of moral origin. Its spiritual cause is a kind of excessive fanatical idealism. It is an idealism that is out of balance with the material conditions of life. Such idealism is most often manifested in a religious way. Many people are prone to religious fervor, especially in their youth. This in itself is very beautiful. Religious zeal can lead to a decision to fast and torture the body, even to contempt for the body. The body may then appear to be a den of sin, when in fact the physical body is not. Desires and lusts reside in the astral body and cannot be overcome by the discipline of the body. Contempt and torturing the physical body will plant the seed of lung disease. In the Middle Ages, many people sought sanctity and despised and tortured their bodies. This led to an epidemic of tuberculosis in the 19th and 20th century, also in Finland. I think not anymore so much, but it hasn't disappeared on the planet. Then Ervast continues, if tuberculosis is in a person as a seed and has not yet broken out, the disease can occur in this or later incarnation unless, and this is important, the person comes to balance and realizes that the body is given as a gift. It must be wisely treated as a temple, a good companion and helper. Then the karmic background of kidney disease or renal failure also has a spiritual cause. According to Ervast, the person might have been too timid or shy or modest in a previous life. The person has forgotten that one is spiritually as valuable as any other human being. One is too sensitive, in a sense. And this oversensitive approach to life drains the life forces and sets off kidney disease in the coming incarnation. Then one may not be eventually so timid. And if one still is, one will learn how to overcome this. I think this applies to Ervast himself. He was very shy in the beginning of his speaking career, and he had a kidney disease. An increasingly materialistic outlook on life, characterized at the age of enlightenment, is prevalent in the modern age. Materialism was an improvement compared to the blind faith that humankind had in the Middle Ages. However, nervous disease and mental problems are, according to Ervast, a consequence of the practical and philosophical materialism of the past. Cancer is a serious disease with two types of causes. The first reason is that one has brutally used their power over another. They have used psychological and physical violence against another person. The second cause is the use of sexual enchantment, even sex magic. It is also a question of using a power over another human being. This may have happened in distant times, and one may not have freed themselves from all this, but karma has not been reconciled, and this manifests itself as a cancer. I suppose There are nowadays other reasons behind cancer, which has become so common today. People live longer, and any diseases they might have hiding in their inheritance will come up. But this is what Edward saw 100 years ago. Diabetes is a condition in which blood sugar levels are high for long periods of time because pancreas does not produce enough insulin. A curious analogy emerges in diabetes. Bitter is the opposite of sweet. A person has had difficult experiences in the past that have caused them to become bitter in that life. The bitterness has remained latent in the human soul, which has sunk from emotional body into the etheric body and eventually causing diabetes. This, by the way, is the process in which any tendency becomes our nature. Initially, it resides in our astral or mental bodies, but if we keep doing it, it will be part of the etheric body and its forces. And this in itself is a good thing because good qualities like goodness and peaceful mind and all that, they can be won over using the same process. In Rudolf Steiner's view, a person may need a certain disease to overcome a personality trait and develop healing forces that foster one's spiritual growth. Thus, karmically generated disease is not just about amending old digressions through suffering, but an opportunity to develop forces that balance and refine the character. In this sense, a disease can be a great teacher. He goes on saying that it may be that the person has won those personality traits which were lacking in some previous incarnation, and kind of the seed has been overcome, and there is no need for having the disease in the first place. So it's not always so that we must suffer through going through an illness if we have gone through our self-education to the point that we have won the initial thing which caused that disease. Okay. Next, we turn to discussing Rudolf Steiner's karma exercises. I find it exciting that karma is something which could be understood more deeply with certain meditative exercises. So the first type is preliminary or preparatory karma exercises. Luigi Morelli has written a book on this, which is based on Steiner. And Steiner formulated several exercises aimed at developing conscious encounters, objectivity, and understanding of other people and life events. In addition, he offered exercises that can help individuals recognize the forces of destiny in their biography and eventually reawaken memories of personal lives. Morelli notes that Steiner did not bring these exercises to the ultimate form as he did with the spiritual exercises offered in his masterpiece, Knowledge of Higher Worlds and Its Attainment. Morelli organizes karma exercises provided by Steiner in three groups. Preparatory karma exercises, he calls them preludes to karma exercises, then lesser karma exercises, and greater karma exercises. The first preparatory karma exercise is gratitude. Steiner advises us to look back at our lives and see the part played by our parents, relatives, friends, teachers, and other figures in our lives. This will lead us to realize how much we owe to others. When this exercise is repeated over time, an impression of important people in our lives will emerge, pointing to their deeper meaning. This is something that I have done, and it is worth looking at back and see which people have helped me as a person and be grateful to them. And another version is more difficult. It involves bringing before the mind's eye images of people who have acted directly or indirectly as hindrances and opposition. This exercise will develop an objective sense of our indebtedness. The point is to give space to another individual within our souls without emotional response. Admittedly, this is a demanding exercise since feelings of hurt and anger are easily aroused when we are thinking about people who have opposed or wronged us. The second karma exercise in this category is learning to look back at an event in our lives as if we were spectators of ourselves. This will free us from the images that bind us to the past and unravel identification with our life experiences, which can sometimes be a heavy burden. Success, in this exercise demands repeated practice. Although Steiner doesn't say so in this context, the preliminary exercises seem to require forgiving others and oneself for all errors and wrongdoings. Forgiveness is an essential skill in the spiritual path. Moreover, real, true forgiveness has profound, even cosmic consequences. Renouncing the recompense to the iron law of karmic necessity liberates forces of the higher hierarchies, the lords of karma. It has, of course, significant benefits for the person as well. And then the lesser karma exercises. The first lesser karma exercise invites us to look back to one single event of life that seems to be due to chance. Another possibility is looking back to an event we did not wish to happen. The aim is to picture the event as something we had planned before our birth, as if it had been designed by what Steiner calls the second person in us. Initially, the second person appears to be artificial, but with repeated practice, that person grows and evolves within us. This exercise helps us remember that we actually wanted this event, for instance, an accident, to happen. It will develop peacefulness, acceptance, and a sense of purpose in life. We will learn to take responsibility for our destiny and cease to blame others for unpleasant events and failures. In the exercise of contrary being, we take a retrospective look at life and observe which tendencies have come naturally for us and which have not. What could not develop within us despite our desires to the contrary? What could we not avoid? With this exercise, the image of the contrary being is formed, and Steiner asks to immerse ourselves in this being. This will help us to realize what is not the outcome of this life, but comes from previous incarnations. A related karma exercise concentrates on situations in which we were spared from something serious. Perhaps our departure was delayed by a few minutes, saving us from an accident. This exercise develops an ability to perceive chains of events guided by karmic forces. In an extended lesser karma exercise, Steiner advises observing everything that has taken place over the last week or months. All unpleasant events are observed with no thought of injustice caused to us or with any self-justification of our shortcomings. We take full responsibility for everything that has happened to us. This will create a new relationship with the spiritual world and lead to the recognition of the role of the second person in arranging the events of our life. I guess that the second person is our higher self. Although Steiner does not say so, keeping a diary before starting the extended lesser karma exercises could be helpful. And then the greater karma exercises. Morelli calls the first greater karma exercise the Moon, Saturn, Sun exercise. It can be about oneself or another person. All the layers of personality will be peeled away one by one in meditation. First, one disregards all external activity, profession, and living conditions. Second, the meditation concentrates on temperament, mood, and way of thinking. This will make transparent everything working in the will. Behind this, the spiritual moon will start to shine. In the next stage, everything coming from emotions and temperament will be disregarded. The focus is on the way a person thinks. This will make the rhythmic system transparent, and the spiritual sun will start to shine. In the final stage, the person's thinking will be disregarded, and impulses from Saturn will be revealed. One begins to see the individual as a spiritual being and starts perceiving the karma of that individual. Perhaps it would be best to apply this exercise only to oneself, since knowing another person's karma seems to require a specific reason. The second greater karma exercise lasts for 4 days and 3 nights. This exercise is about spiritual painting of a life event by recreating all the impressions received by our senses in the greatest detail. If another person is related to the event, that person will be recreated as well, including the way she moved, the tone of her voice, words, gestures, smells, and so on. Next, the event will be taken into sleep, where the astral body will give it a shape. This is repeated the following 2 days. This way, the image will be imprinted into the etheric body, which will continue to work on the image. Steiner describes how the person will experience his this memory as walking in a cloud, giving rise to the feeling of being part of the picture itself. The feeling will grow an objective picture that is related to the event in a previous incarnation that was the root cause for the event in this incarnation. All these karma exercises, especially the greater ones, require a great deal of concentration and skillful meditation. The aim of the lesser karma exercises is to take responsibility for our lives and accept all events, pleasant and unpleasant alike, as part of our biography. Indeed, according to Steiner and many others, we did this joyously before we were born, when we had a preview of the main events and difficulties waiting for us. The karma exercises aim to gain knowledge from our personal karma. Steiner's karma exercises provide much food for thought. For instance, looking back at pivotal points and people in one's biography helps to understand one's destiny. One may also recognize how one's actions have affected the course of life of other people. Accepting one's life as it is, including unpleasant events, is essential. This can be achieved by gratitude and forgiveness toward those who have helped us to find our way, even when they have acted negatively from our perspective. After all, we have wanted these things to happen to us in our higher consciousness before we were born. This is by no means easy to achieve, especially if we have had to endure serious hardship in our lives. And then, how to overcome karma. I think that Steiner's exercises point to many ways in this respect, but let's see what Pekka Ervast had to say about this. If we have done something that has karmic consequences entailing suffering, then of course we cannot overcome karma except by suffering. The first way to overcome karma is suffering joyfully, not complaining, and thinking it is undeserved. If we do not blame other people, God, or existence, but suffer with joyful submission, then we catch the secret of suffering and overcome suffering and evil karma. Then we have taken the sting out of karma. It then has no power over us as something frightening has. When we set our good mind against all suffering, we will win. We must not resist suffering, but win. The second way is obvious. It is to stop doing evil and creating evil karma. Otherwise, we really cannot get rid of karma at all. We will not get out of it if we just keep creating bad karma, thinking ugly, selfish thoughts, talking nonsense, and doing deeds that have bad consequences. If we stop doing all that, our karma in the bad sense will end. This, of course, takes self-education, moral striving, and meditation. Then there is a third point, which is also necessary. It is that we learn to know ourselves and we have a proper understanding of what we are as human beings. It is not enough to think of ourselves as thinking, feeling, and willing beings living in the physical world. It doesn't matter much in this regard that we know our personality. We need to have a sense of who we are in the deepest sense of our being. The way to overcome karma is to become ourselves. Our true state of being, the higher self, is love. All karma evaporates in the bright light that is the manifestation of love. Finally, Ervast summarizes facing and overcoming karma in the following way. When one receives the kingdom of God and enters into an inner relationship with the spirit of life and truth, one is in the same position as someone who has suddenly inherited infinite capital. How can one be anything but joyful and grateful for the payment of all one's debts? What are they? What are the sufferings for one? One is so rich. Debt means nothing. One's soul is full of joy, happiness, bliss, and peace. All suffering, hardship, and humiliation are only bare happiness to one. Thank you for listening.